Okay, it's 12 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Can I add something to the agenda?
Sure.
I'd like to discuss the meeting.
Before that, we need a support, and then you can add.
I support it.
You support, okay. Go ahead.
Can I request that we add an item to the agenda?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we'll add meeting time and DDA meeting time and date under D of new business.
Under DDA special organization.
DDA meeting date and time
Oh,
Under D.
under D.
Thanks.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can I get a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Support.
Who supported?
this.
I'm not sure if you can be a voting member and to make motions since our bylaws haven't changed yet.
I think I would, I guess what I would respond is the ordinance has already been changed and the council policy statement has already been changed. I think they control, personal opinion.
I think that you may be a member of the board, but until the bylaws change, I don't believe that you can vote.
I would disagree.
Yeah.
I think that the bylaws committee needs to meet within the next 30 days and we need to make those updates to our bylaws, but at this meeting, because we're unsure, I don't think that.
I'll do the support
Yeah.
one. Well, you're still posted.
Well, I understand. My comment is, it's my understanding that the issue of the bylaws was brought to the board a couple of times by our mayor and had ample opportunity to do it. They haven't done.
So the bylaws committee hasn't had a chance to meet from my understanding. That's what we were just talking about. So within the next 30 days, I ask that the bylaws committee meets and the bylaws get updated and the changes will be made and then voted upon at our July
Okay,
meeting.
just for the record, I'll continue to vote and then you can move it like a motion.
I don't know if the board is supporting that.
No, and if then I will not record it. I will record the current members of the board. But I can put it there. You know.
So is there someone else to support the going into the motion? Okay. Second?
Me.
Any discussion? Okay. Is there any public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on the proposed fiscal year 1920 DDA budget? Okay, hearing none, can we get a motion to go out of public hearing?
So
Yes.
moved.
I'll support it.
Kyle and
Sherry. Okay, consideration to approve the fiscal year 2019-20 DDA budget in the amount of $500,000, come on, Rachel. 523, 450.
So moved.
guys, you're going too fast.
Support. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, just a second. I can, that's that fast. Who made the motion?
I made the motions.
Okay,
I think Sherry's.
okay. Thank you. Okay, So we need
Do roll call?
roll call. Brooks,
Yes.
Deponio absent. Lynn,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
Eftaxiadis, yes. Lyle,
Yes.
Moser,
Yes.
motion passed.
I'd also like to vote yes, I know you're not recording it, just for the
I will
record.
make, I will put it on the record.
Okay, any public comment? Hearing none. Stacy, President of the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce, is going to provide an economic development update.
I feel like I'm really close. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you putting me on the agenda today. So I just want to come and kind of let you guys know where we're at as a Chamber with Economic Development. And I'm going to apologize now if I cough or anything because I have really bad allergies, so I apologize. But we have secured over $110,000 in funding right now. We formed the EDC, so our Economic Development Council. The EDC has already met 3 times. We've hired an HR firm out of Traverse City, the same one that was hired by Traverse Connect for their CEO one call. So we're working with them on the hiring process right now. We do have several investors in our model that we've put together. And then we do have several people, I think 9 people on the Economic Development Council. So I kind of wanted to provide that update to you as well, and then talk about some of the current projects that we are working on. And then also just keep in mind that we have contracts with the city and county, but they have not even started yet. We don't have funding from them as of yet, and the contracts aren't starting until either July 1st or until the Economic Development Director is hired. So we're kind of just taking the lead as of right now doing on some of these projects. One right now we're working on, and some of this I can't go into too much detail because it is confidential, with a new business in town. We've met with them several times. We're helping them secure funding to get this business moving. We're working with Rob Carson on zoning and some other things as well for that business. We've been working with West Shore Community College on the Old Clicks project that they have purchased that property, so we're working with them on that, and we'd also be a partner in that building as a tenant. Other things we're doing is the MEDC, they are working on marketing industrial properties, so in Renaissance Park. So I'm a part of Region 2 with all the economic development directors and committees with that group through Networks Northwest. And they brought a whole team from MEDC, probably 5 or 6 of them, and that's what they're focusing on is some of that industrial properties. So I'll be going up to Traverse City for that meeting. Other things is we've done some referrals to the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, for startup businesses, and I believe 1 or 2 of them were in the downtown district. And we're working closely to look at having another developer day this year. That brought in developers to this area. That one of them is looking at a housing project that hopefully we'll hear about at the end of this month. Another one is looking at developing certain properties within downtown, and I actually was in Chicago meeting with them again. I've had several phone calls and meetings with them, so they are very interested in developing in downtown. There's other things, you know, Rob Carson and I have met multiple times because we understand that the zoning, we need to work very closely with his department, so we're working together with that. We're also working on just some other things with new website marketing, a lot of these properties. I've been working with Lisette a lot with Project Rising Tide and identifying what are those priority sites, especially in the downtown, that we can start marketing, and we're going to be having a meeting with the MEDC as well. So we're trying to do all this, and we don't even have that director yet, or some of these contracts are funding coming in. So I kind of wanted to put that out there to all of you, and hopefully that we can sit down and have a conversation on how we can work closely together and collaboratively to move the downtown, you know, in a great direction, and we can partner together on some of that. So that's what
The 110,000, you said is that without the city contract?
we've included that in that number. That's what's been secured.
And you mentioned the city, what were the other contracts that you had?
I can go down to our other investors. We have Barn and Castle, Oil and Propane, thanks Dennis. City of Manistee, Consumers Energy, Fab Light, Filer Credit Union, Iron Fish Distillery, Little River Holdings, Manistee County, Manistee Industrial Development Corporation, Martin Marietta, Munson Healthcare, Manistee Hospital, and West Shore Community College. And we do have a couple other meetings pending out there with other people that are interested in investing.
Any other questions?
I guess the question I have is, you probably can't even answer this, but how do we better work together? And, I mean, we've been handicapped because we haven't had a full-time director, and we didn't want to really throw that at Tom because it was temporary nature. You've been handicapped because, first funding, the hiring, that doesn't mean you're not doing things, but things are still coming in. We're kind of waiting on, rising tide and Joe Borgstrom's recommendations, because I think a lot of his report is going to be recommendations on how we work together. But given the history, what do you think we can do, whether we end up being a financial contributor or not? And I know that's on the table as well at some point in the future to discuss.
Tom brought in Caitlin yesterday, so I offered when she gets started and she's comfortable to sit down and have lunch or coffee or whatever, just to kind of talk to her about what we're doing and kind of asked her, what are your priorities so that we're not tripping over each other and we can accent each other and help out with that. So I think that has to be huge, that partnership. I mean, Tyler and I work closely together, but I think having the boards, your directors or presidents are the ones leading this organization, so kind of having those people take the lead and report back and, making sure they would have a good, close working relationship. But I think for us, if, for you guys, I'm not sure what Caitlin's priorities are. So once we know that, I would love to sit down with, whether it's your committee or whoever, with our executive committee or board, and really where are the gaps that are missing. Because I know in Joe's presentation that he did, he was saying, findings for the DDA, looking at real estate development, business improvement, trainings and workshops for businesses, business recruitment, and entrepreneurship training. So if those are things that she's not focusing on, maybe we can fill the void in some of that and focus that on it and work together more closely on that. But I think we do need to have a conversation where we can sit down, because I don't want to walk in here myself or our board and tell you guys what you need. That's not the right way to approach that. And we've sat down with the city and, when they put the contract together to say, hey, what do you need? And then, okay, this is what we think you need. Does this make sense? And we all agreed to it versus I don't want to force anybody into it or vice versa. We want this to be a good partnership because we all want the same thing. We want our community to grow. Population is declining. We need to do something. And we can't continue to have the same conversation without action. So I think that's, part of the reason the chamber stepped up is because it's like, they're all business leaders. They need, when they're recruiting people, they need downtown to be vibrant. They need housing. I mean, some of these things we all struggle with, but we all need to come together to figure out what's the best way going forward with that.
Thank you for those comments.
What's your time? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
Continue.
Since you started off with your time, we might be asking the same question. What's your timeline
Thank you.
on that you hope to have a director in place? Is that what you're going
I'm
to
not
ask?
going to give you, I'm not going to give you a
Absolutely.
specific date, but the firm is going to be conducting phone interviews. And then out of the phone interviews, there'll be obviously face-to-face interviews. And then after that, if there's 2 quality candidates selected, then we'll go from there. But I'll be honest, we're not going to hire someone just to hire someone. We want to make sure we have the right fit
Understood.
in.
But
Which I think
you're well, it sounds like you're well in that process right
Yes.
now.
Mhm.
Because the other piece is the rising tide stuff. I mean, with Caitlin starting essentially now for us, the pieces are coming together, but it's really those 3 almost have to come together first before we really make strong plans. It doesn't mean there's not a ton of work to do in the interim. And I appreciate everything you are doing, even though you don't have your resources yet to do it.
I do want to go back to, it is about a timeline, which, I believe we have to set a date or set a target to complete this. It's been going on a long time. But in you're trying to get somebody hired, but I heard in there that you are doing economic development
Oh, absolutely.
currently, and so you have at least 2 to 3 different big projects that you're juggling, which which is great. Also on top of that, you have developed the board at this point. We can have If by any chance DDA comes aboard, part of that, do they get a representation on that board?
That, I mean, that's open for discussion, absolutely.
Any more questions?
I would just suggest, and Stacy hit on it, when the city started talking with Chamber, we just sat down and discussed on what kind of a format we would want. And I would suggest that maybe we start there and get that working instead of waiting until all the pieces are coming together. You understand where I'm coming from, Barry? That we have the framework of what we want to do if those things happen. County did something similar, and their funding goes when a director's hired. The city was a little bit different. We just said July 1st, and we trust you that you're going to do the economic development for us. So it might behoove the board to appoint a committee to sit down with the chamber and try to hammer out, in principle, some framework that we could put in place when everything falls together.
And we
There
do
is a
have a
committee.
committee, and we have sat down with them a couple times, actually. We have what's it called, economic development group, which I chair. And we've sat down a few times and given our recommendations about, we've recommended that we consider, looking at a contract process, but on the other hand, we also have the individual hire recommendation. Those are the only two options that are out there. We've met, and Barry, you were with me and Val was, but it's like, the chamber's plan sounded very good and solid. However, there are still members that wanted that individual hire, and we're looking for specific things in economic development. So that's kind of where it's standing at this time.
The county provided a list of needs, activities that they would need as related to economic development.
We trusted in allowing the chamber to facilitate that and to report back to us in regards to how it meets our strategic planning. So we didn't set specific, strong guidelines. Your contract was pretty much, we want to see this, it has to be community-wide, and it, just correlates to our strategic plan. But we felt that in writing a contract, we are buying the service, and we will look for the expectation. We didn't need to define it.
Any more comments, questions?
I just wondered, being new, does the board have a time frame to decide whether you're going to hire your own or contract for somebody else?
I think the committee should meet and then possibly come back with a recommendation.
Is there a scheduled meeting for the committee?
No, because we're at stalemate, because the committee was fine with going with a contract,
Okay,
but
so it sounds like that decision's been made then.
Barry, we've been on the fence, we've been going back and forth. It hasn't met in, 3 months. We did meet, we did have them do their proposal, we had a conversation, and that's where it stalemated.
In my mind, and maybe this is just me wanting to punt this because it's a political hot potato. In my mind, our issues as a DDA board will not get resolved until Rising Tide proposal comes back and really says this is what is recommended the DDA focus on. Because I think we are divided as a board, and I think that has shown over the last year. So I would like to start moving forward, but I'm really just waiting for Joe to come back with his final report and say, here the specifics are what makes sense for the DDA to be focusing on, what it makes sense for the chamber to be focusing on, what it makes sense for the city to be focusing on. Because then we basically got outside validation to answer that question for us. But that's my take on it.
I think the other thing we were waiting to get our director on board.
Well, that
And
was,
because she really needs to be an integral piece of this puzzle and needs to understand where we're at and get input from her.
Well, I think that part of our difficulty in making that final decision, the positive that came out of that was the idea that, you know, we do need somebody as a director.
Right.
In really reviewing that process and all the expectations, the job descriptions and everything that we talked about, we saw that two positions are different. And economic development, if we want it the way that we have talked about it through our planning and our meetings, can't be somebody who's doing the day-to-day operation, because it conflicts on many occasions. So I think out of that meeting, we're at a stalemate. However, there was a positive that came out of the total agreement that a director needed to be.
And we really have met and worked on this for a long time. And like Karen said, came up with that decision.
When do we expect Joe's report?
I can provide you an update whenever the rising tide section
He
starts.
gave a,
Okay.
I mean, there
report
was
to
a
us
draft,
today.
so I mean, I can give some of it, but
Okay.
that probably has
But-
additional.
From my perspective, regardless of what the Rising Tide report comes up with, you know, we still determine what our projects are, what our targets are, and depending on what those are, then at that time, we'll be looking for resources. It may be that the resources exist at EDC. I know that there are resources available through the city's DRA. There are other private entities that have resources that we need. It's all going to depend on what our projects are, what our specific technical needs are, from my perspective.
so maybe Karen, the Economic Development Committee could meet again and start the discussion again. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
Okay, can I get approval of the April 10th, 2019 meeting minutes?
We do not
Those
have
were in
those.
the,
No.
yeah.
The only one you have is May.
So we tabled those
Which
last
are-
month, because we didn't have them, we still don't have them, so we need to table them again.
And then May 8th,
Those meeting minutes are in the packet.
yeah.
Make a motion to approve those minutes, May 8th.
I support, however, I do, there's one typo that should be corrected. Under Rising Tide, it's not a downtown mural, it's a downtown mural.
It's
I think autocorrect corrects it to a completely different word.
Okay, with,
Steve, will you resend me those with that change?
I will.
let me make a
Any discussion?
just this.
Mosher supported, Lynn, or excuse me,
No, I got
Mosher
it.
made the motion,
Yep.
Lynn supported with the correction to the word. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll table the May 14th meeting minutes. Financial report, Tom?
You all have a copy of the most recent financial report, page 8 of your board packet. This is all the monthly disbursements from the past month. Probably one that you might have a little, there's actually two. Jack Pine Business Center's office expense, $2,063. What that is now. I lost it.
It was printing something for Hops and Crops, wasn't it? Jeff Pine?
It was a couple of different things. There was some just general office supplies, and there was, I can't remember what it was, I'll have to look it up now. But the other one is the patent and trademark office. There's a $925
fee there for the sleigh bell trademark renewal. And I talked to Rachel about that. It's done every 5 years, so it's a 5-year vote to protect that trademark name. And I cannot think, I know it was something approved, the jack line. I can't remember what it was.
So that trademarks Victorian sleigh bell parade, that, those words. We really should look at the people that use that, because they use it and then they put different logos with it, different pictures with it, and that's kind of why we trademark it, so people don't do that, so it doesn't have a different perspective out in the community, and so that nobody else can use that name for that event. Anything else with the financial report?
Yeah, this is the last month, I mean, this is the 11 months of your year, and I just want to let you know that you're about $101,594 under revenues. I mean, you have not received, you're under budget as far as revenues by over $100,000, but you're going to be getting about $20,000 more in tax revenue before the year end, and there probably are some other revenues that you'll receive before the end of the year. You're about $58,100 under expenses. So right now, if you ended the year, you'd be about $43,488 would be your deficit that would come out of your fund balance. So, and that's mainly due to the fact that you didn't have a director, and I'm working a lot less hours, so and you're not paying any fringes or anything like that. So there was an issue at the end of last year with how the revenue came in for the tax revenue, so that may make a change too. That's probably not going to get taken care of until audit time. Barry and I talked about that a little bit, but I think you're okay. You're actually, well under your expenses. It's just the revenue, and it's mainly due to the tax revenue. Just not. I think we're over budgeting maybe on tax revenue. I'm not sure, but that's everything else seems to be kind of coming in pretty close to what was budgeted.
Any questions, comments?
Thanks, Tom.
I talked to Ed, you really don't need, because you're under on your expenses, you really don't need to do any budget amendments at the end of the year. The state doesn't really care about your revenues as much as they care about your expenses.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the financial reports as presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? T, when you're ready to do
Yep.
roll call?
Brooks,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
Taxi Adams, yes. Wiley,
Yes.
Moser,
Yes.
Knowles will vote yes.
Motion carried. Committee reports. Director?
Every month I've given you a report on my activities. I don't have a lot to add to that, other than this is probably my last board meeting with you, and I've really enjoyed actually doing this, a lot more than I probably will admit. But I am anxious to kind of get back to retirement. However, we did talk with a couple of board members before the meeting about me staying on, maybe to help Caitlin just a little bit. I've already met with her a couple days, and I can work a lot less hours and kind of come in and meet with her. And also, some of the board members that we met, that I talked to before the meeting, felt that maybe it would be a good idea for me to stay on and kind of see the TIF plan through to its completion. And that would require me not to work a lot of hours. I won't be here milking any of those hours or anything like that. But I could work with the city and with the TIF committee and kind of keep that going and not have Caitlin have to worry about learning that process. So I don't know if that requires board action or not, but I mean, I would just continue to.
Just to make it sound a little bit better than you met with a couple board members members, which sounds, the executive committee had a meeting scheduled.
Was that the
for this.
executive committee?
Yes,
Okay.
it was the executive committee. So, and in that committee discussion, some of those items came up, so.
And since we're operating under the existing agreement, we don't need to take any action.
And that's all I have, unless you have questions about anything. I did send because I actually took care of, before the Memorial Day weekend, I took care of some issues over at the American Cleaners Building, trying to make it look a little nicer. It's really looking like it needs, the lawn needs to be cut again, and, you know, maybe some weed eating done. And I've sent an email to Jeff McCula asking him to give us a price, but I haven't heard back from him. So hopefully we'll get something back.
I received a lot of compliments on the missing decals, the shrubs that you trimmed.
Yeah.
That was kind of a fun day for me.
It was-
Went back to my Jerry Steinberg landscaping days, because I worked for him in the college student.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you went above and beyond like Call of Duty.
I told Caitlin.
Mowing grass.
Yeah, when
Cutting shrubs.
Caitlin reads these reports, and I told her yesterday, I said, believe me, you're not gonna be expected to go out there and mow lawns.
Oh, you shouldn't have said
that.
All good other things.
Yeah.
Do what Tom did.
I will say, Tom came to me as chair of the design committee and basically said, should I do this? And it was like 2 days before Memorial Day.
You
It's
tried
like,
to get the city in there.
If you don't do it, it's not gonna get done. I'm not saying you need to, but use your own judgment.
And Dennis Sturhorse helped me with the decals for about an hour and a half, so, thanks to him.
Well, thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Tom? Barry, design?
The minutes of our meeting are in packets. We have been working on a lot of stuff. I mean, you now see some of the results. The flower baskets are up. The banners that this board approved are up. So those are things. And I meant to say this at public comment at city council last week, but by the time I remembered it, public comment was over. But I really want city staff, Jeff McCula, DPW, to know that we really appreciate all of the work they do. I mean, all of those things would not be possible if it wasn't for city staff. I mean, Jeff's been really amazing, especially when flowers are getting delivered on Thursday, 2 days before the holiday weekend. I mean, they pulled it all off. I don't know how, but it was amazing. So I really appreciate that. So, any questions for design based on the minutes?
I do. Should I go now or later?
Why don't you do that on a rising tide?
Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause
So marketing and promotions, there is no chair, but I am working with Teresa Kiefer from 9 and 10 News, a collaboration between us, possibly the chamber, possibly the CBD on marketing, not just the downtown, but the entire community. I was supposed to meet with her last week, but she was unavailable to come in, so I'm hoping that we are going to meet within the next week or so. And she's coming to us with a plan, and I will report back to the board next month on the plan. I'm sure there's going to be a financial ask. But I suggested that we definitely look at partnering with, if it's the entire community, with the chamber and the CBP. Business development, unfortunately Val could not be here today. Redevelopment, T.
A couple of quick things. The American Cleaners property, there are, while we have funds for demolishing the building. There are opportunities for some state funding, and I've talked with the city's BRA consultant, and I don't know if it would be through the BRA or directly with with a private consultant about applying for the funding on behalf of the DDA. Or so depending on that, and also other discussions with MEDC and MDQ, if it appears that trying to get the public funding is going to take forever, as quite often it is, then we will look at doing demolition, through the funds we have allocated. So in the next week or so, I will talk again with the DEQ and with the BRA's consultant, Roman. I always forget his name, and I know him for years, Roman Wilson. And then I will also talk with Ed Bradford about whether there is preference in going through the BRA or going through directly with a consultant. The cost is going to be the same, but I think there is value in going through the city's BRA.
Question, have you worked with Lizette on this, see if she can pull any strings to?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've talked with the same people that would be involved in that, and
I just think Lizette should be aware of what you're doing.
yeah,
So,
I will let her know about it.
Any questions for T? Recruitment, as everybody knows, we hired Caitlin. She has already met with Tom for a few hours, and she also attended a conference last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago. So her official start date, we are going to make as of Monday.
This past Monday.
This past Monday. But pay her an hourly rate for what she has already.
Actually, I think the conference she attended was on Monday, and then she came from Traverse City right here. Is that not the case?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, and then the executive committee met this morning, and her top priorities will be the reporting requirements for the DDA, the state reporting requirements, accounting or daily DDA activities, Spark, the American Cleaners Building, design committee support, and Rising Tide, engaged with Rising Tide, but not be the primary DDA representative for Rising Tide. So what the executive committee talked about is that these priorities will be her first 6 months. We'll evaluate these after 6 months. She has specifically asked for evaluations, so we'll do a 6-month evaluation on these priorities. And then either in the next 6 months or the next year, keep some of these priorities or eliminate them and come up with new priorities. And the reason why the TIF isn't on here, because as Tom had mentioned, we asked Tom if he would stay on to complete the TIF. So we're not going, and Tom is going to bring Caitlin up to date on the TIF, but it's not going to be her priority. Tom said that he would stay on to finish that tip.
A couple comments I'll add to that is, if you're listening, you'll notice that something missing from that list is economic development related activities, which might be surprising since that's ultimately what we probably want a lot of the focus of being on. But the conversation on the committee was really around easing her in because she doesn't come with a lot of experience, although a lot of potential. To basically initially the first period focus on basically the type of stuff that Tom has been doing in his tenure on a part-time basis. I would imagine for the first couple months it may take her full-time hours to accomplish the things that Tom's been doing while she's coming up to speed. And then tying back to our conversation earlier, when we have more of a direction as a board as it relates to economic development coming out of Rising Tide, chamber interaction, that probably then becomes her, much more of her charter in kind of the next phase of her development.
But even then, there will still be some needs that she will not have the experience to deal with for several years. So we still need, I think we'll need outside resources.
And again, we're trying to not repeat the mistakes of our past directors where, and after the fact, we've kind of heard that we burned them out by having way too many things to do, not a lot of direction. So we're trying to focus in a manageable set of things. At the same time, I expect things will come up that she will get involved in.
It worked, yeah, it worked with Tom where we gave specific direction, asked them to do specific things and not do specific things. And that's what the executive team wanted to do when we met this morning with Caitlin, is that she's not getting pulled from different board members in different directions or people outside of the board and attending meetings that do not fit in these specific priorities. So we're hoping that giving her these, 6 or 7 specific priorities, that doesn't happen.
It sounds like I think it's a good start, so I think it's a good choice.
Any questions? Okay, economic development, Karen?
We will be scheduling a meeting.
Sounds good. Tip? Tom or T?
Where the TIP plan is right now is we had a draft out there that's been going back and forth with some corrections. I think Barry and T and some others have responded to that. It went back to John Michelangeli, and John just submitted another draft to me. Hopefully that's kind of a final draft. And it's been submitted to the city for review, and I think, Thad, didn't you say?
We have a meeting scheduled for the 24th for internal review.
So until then, it's probably at a standstill until we get back with the city. We also need to sit down with the city and negotiate either in or outside of the TIP plan, the annual fee that we pay to them. John Michelangeli gave us a couple of suggestions. I think we've got so tied up in some of the other parts of the TIP plan that we kind of dropped the ball on that for the last month or two, and I think we need to get back with that. And then it's going to be a matter of how we deal with the Citizens Committee, because it's my understanding we only have two members, and there has to be, does there have to be 9?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happens if we can't get 9?
Well,
Because basically, the statute reads that just because you can't impanel 9 in an established committee, that doesn't hold up the TIP process.
The
Oh,
statute
it
also
doesn't.
has a provision that you can waive the citizens committee through a petition of the,
Yeah, either,
because that's what Filer or DDA is doing, because they're a few months ahead of us in the same process, so they are going through the petition process.
regardless, the lack of a citizen committee is not going to impede the
Oh,
process.
so we can still keep moving
Yes.
forward. Okay, good.
So Tom, will you stay in touch with the city to
Absolutely.
move forward
Yep.
with the TIF?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions?
Not in regards to that, but I had added something to the agenda underneath D.
Oh, I think it's under new business.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just followed
Done.
that. Okay.
Events, Karen, is there any report?
No, and I was thinking that maybe when Caitlin gets here, we could meet with her, because really truly what it is about what it's come down to is like a format in regards to how do we approve events, like we have to give it our approval if somebody else, like an outside organization wants to run an event. Val came up with that form, so that we can kind of present it here, sign off it, and then it's validated. And that's pretty much all the event stuff. That's
There's
outstanding.
somebody in our community that's interested in the event position. It would be she looks at it as it would be like a contract position for her. She does have a full-time job. I wasn't sure if we still want to look at that option to hire someone to plan events. So maybe the events committee could meet on that and revisit that idea.
We'll wait until Caitlin gets aboard to meet with her too, so that she can kind of weigh in on the experience she has with that.
Rising Tide, Barry and Lizette.
I'll talk first, and then Lizette can correct me on all the things I'm saying wrong. So between our last meeting and this meeting, the Rising Tide Steering Committee met, and other than just updates on the status of the 4 areas, a lot of discussion in that meeting was around really what happens after this 1 year is up. What format does a group meeting periodically that gets together that tries to continue with these outcomes, what does that look like? And I think there's a lot of different viewpoints on where that is right now, but that's why we're starting this conversation with 6 months to go before Lizette bails on us. So that's really what I have to report out of the meeting, but other things Rising Tide related, as was mentioned earlier, Joe Borgstrom, the consultant for the Economic Development Project, presented a first draft of his things to a collection of people, and I was there, Stacy, Thad, and my summary of it is at that point, I think he was just trying to prepare us for the direction he's going. I was, very pleased with it. There wasn't necessarily yet a lot of depth in things like recommendations. They were very high level. But he talked a lot about demographic data, kind of the status of our community, from our aging population to our economic, those types of demographics. There was a lot of information about that. He then talked a little bit about market potential in certain types of industries, retail, et cetera, as it related to the city and the DDA. He then kind of started introducing, I think, us as a group as to how he sees roles and responsibilities for the various organizations, whether it be the DDA or the chamber or the CBB, and kind of areas of focus and areas of overlap in those. And again, I think that's going to be where a bulk of his final recommendations come out, are going to be taking that kind of high level and breaking it down into more concrete recommendations. But what he presented made very much sense given the nature of the organizations. But that's my notes on that presentation. The branding initiative has been quiet, although I know Lizette, since I talked to her briefly earlier this morning, is going to have some updated information on where that is. The housing initiative is trailing the others, and it really just got kind of going this past month. There were interviews done. I know I was requested to be interviewed. I don't know if any other board members participated in interviews with Sarah Lucas, the housing consultant. I'm sure he did, yeah. There is 2 things I think coming up. Is there a 19th meeting that's like a draft out of that? And then the 20th, okay, so it's just the 26th is the
I'll go.
community.
Yeah, I'll go over it with all of you.
Okay, so there is a meeting coming up, kind of a community forum on that. As had been talked about last month here, Lizette brought up the idea of murals, and that has been moving forward. If you've been paying attention, there have been articles in the newspaper, et cetera, on that topic. And then the facade grant program, the additional funding. I haven't heard anything, but given what you were saying earlier, you maybe have something to add. So those are the things, but before I turn it over to Lizette, I do want to add one more thing. And this isn't necessarily Rising Tide related specifically, but it's a concern I have in this area, is some of us, like Val, myself, the mayor, attended Filer's, DDA's market analysis report, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting well, Lizette was there too. It's very interesting comparing what Joe is coming at us with what this other consultant, and you know, there's a lot of good information in all of it, but my biggest concern is that's yet another group that's putting money into economic development that, from my perspective, is not integrated into everybody else.
They've asked us though.
Oh,
The Filer Township has asked us several times to meet with them, and
Right.
and I thought that's what part of the Economic Development Committee was doing, not looking at different options to come back. And I think that is one option, because they have expressed several times interest. And then with this new presentation coming out, that's different from,
It's part of the
Rising Tide's
complicated, it's part of the
presentation,
complicated
yeah.
landscape.
yeah.
And we did reach out and talk with their DDA, but back then, when we started all this, they were not in a process where they were gonna
Yeah,
talk
I
about
think that we should revisit that conversation again, just to
There
hear
was-
their ideas and
What was the legal conflict in regards to their DDA and?
George had concerns about sharing resources
There would be
when
some
there were
legal
2
conflicts.
DDAs involved, but I don't think that precludes an agreement that could be reached. It would just have to be carefully structured to deal with any potential issues.
do you have their presentation?
It's on YouTube, it was
Oh,
videotaped,
it's-
so
okay.
you can want to watch 2 hours of it. There's a lot of good information.
Who's the consultant?
Both of us.
Gibbs.
Ready?
So
Yes.
now I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
So I have a gazillion things to go over with you guys. Some are comments, some other updates. So I'll start with the economic development part, since all of you asked where's Joe at. I had the same question for him last week. Because he did the preliminary presentation. The one thing I did want to point out is that it's preliminary. So his format, when we talked last week, he said he was just finishing the last few pages to then pass it on to back-end writer to give it the required format for Rising Tide. So that required format is assigning dates, assigning names, assigning, when should this be completed, who should be, in charge of it and whatnot. So for the moment, when he presented it, just like I said, it's just a very broad overview of what he's hoping to do. I'm hoping it's gonna be as specific as he described in all of his presentations. It's the same work he's done in Grayling and the other Rising Tide communities that have worked with him, so I don't see why we should be any different. Last we spoke was Thursday, so I'm giving it this week to talk to background grader and see, when are they gonna hope to be finished with the formatting. And and then I can send an email to all of you once they tell me an approximate date. As far as the branding, Ben Muldrow sent me an email last night about some of the outcome from the branding survey, well, not the outcome and results of the branding survey. It was a fascinating report. I was just reading it this morning. I'll send it to you over today once I have some time, but I think it matters for everyone to read what the community is thinking about the image, the downtown area. It matters for the chamber, it matters for you as a board. If you could take, a few minutes to go through it, I think it would be very beneficial as you make further decisions. With the facade grant, I had a meeting yesterday with Dan Leonard to kind of know where he was at. He told me he made the formal presentation last week, and then he's just waiting to hear about the final decision. So there's no news there yet. There's no news yet with the AARP grant either, the one that I applied like a month or so ago, but the second I hear, obviously I'll email all of you. With the murals, there isn't a formal request from you just yet, but just to bring you up to speed, the Historic District Commission told me that they are looking to, since obviously I'm not going to be here after December, to have a board or organization that would be willing to revisit the mural 3, 5, 10 years from now. And I eventually want to have a proposed budget of how much this is going to cost. I was hoping to come in front of you, see if you were willing to be a part of that, the maintenance in the long run. Again, I don't have a formal request just now, but that will be coming in as soon as it gets more concrete.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Because I know in the newspaper article, there were 2 locations that were discussed. One being on River Street. My concern with that location is, I think it's fine for the murals, but if that property owner doesn't repair the stucco that's falling off of there, I mean, it looks like a dump right now.
Which one?
The one that has the 3 windows.
That's the AMS
Yes.
bookshop?
Underneath those windows, whole slabs of stucco are falling off and are just laying on the ground. I wouldn't want to be investing in murals with that
I
condition
don't
of
think
that
so,
spot.
and it's weird because.
So I just think that would be a concern
Yeah.
of potentially funding or
Right.
supporting that as a location if the owner is thinking that
Which
we're
is-
gonna make the building look better, but not put any effort into dealing with some significant issues.
That building was recently purchased.
Yes.
By this couple that they buy property and just remodel properties, so they have do pending work to do in the building. In fact, he's the one donating the paint for that mural and the other one. I have to talk to him obviously because I gotta look at the dimensions of the windows and all of those things, so I could acquire.
It's
What
just a
is his
concern
plan?
because
Yeah.
the purpose of the murals is to
Absolutely.
really raise, and if
Yeah.
the
Makes
surrounding
sense.
is not in good condition.
Well, I'll just confirm with him kind of where they're at because I know that they're hoping to work on that building. I don't know their timeline or to what extent, but I'll make sure to bring it to his attention.
One community that I'm familiar with that has a lot of murals, and it's not in this state. They go over every few years and repaint them because the weather, they do fall.
Yeah.
They underline paint also.
Okay, so getting lost, the other thing I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, also the economic development, and this is just a comment, this is not something I was planning to say, but I did hear you say that, the issues might get solved when the rising tide strategy comes in. I would like to disagree and say that I think all of you have to talk to a board because it doesn't matter if it's Filer, if it's us, if it's Karen, whomever it is. You gotta convene where you wanna, who or which way you wanna go for any of these strategies, whichever way you wanna go makes sense. Because I could come to you and tell you, let's paint this wall, but if you're not all agreeing into painting that wall, what I'm saying is pointless. So agreeing with T, I think you should probably figure out first the direction in which you'd like to go for these strategies for you to take advantage of these recommendations, I would say. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, Caitlin, I don't know, I was thinking of asking you anyway, but I think it would be beneficial for me to, if you were okay for me to meet with her and kind of bring her up to speed with the things that I have been working with that I have to do. with the downtown
It's not
district?
her priority.
Okay, cool.
To be engaged but not be the representative.
Yeah, and I think it's
at
just
the
good, so like send her the documents, just the things that I work with, so if anybody ever, you know, down the road has questions, she'll be able to answer. About the housing, it's going to be, well, we will have a housing forum on June 26th at the high school auditorium. Sarah Lucas from Housing North will be the lead consultant guiding that community forum. And then, what is the other thing I was going to tell you? The question I had about to the design committee was, I heard from one of the staff at DPW that some of you were looking at the electric generators in River Street to repaint them. Is that correct?
Transformers,
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
we commented about it just
Okay.
for several years.
Well, it's just because in this whole thing with the mural, there's a lot of community members that have come up to me telling me, you know, giving ideas. And at least 5 people have taken pictures of those transformers or however you call them, that has
Yeah,
really terrible things painted on them.
yeah.
Are those the ones with poles?
No,
I'll show you, I'll
they're
show
on
you
the
a
Riverwalk.
picture.
Oh, the Riverwalk ones, yes.
Oh, down on the river walks.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know how long did you guys think about this, but it might be an initiative
We've
worth
talked about it for years.
We've talked about it, but
pursuing.
we don't even know, well, we believe, what I heard from DPW was those are technically owned by consumers and we can't
I
really
think that
paint
is
them,
the case.
but then we need to be working with
I mean, I
consumers
would
to
be
get.
really happy to try to get with Eric Gustat from consumers
Right.
and just ask him, because we
Right.
have at least 2 of those that have male general
There's
parts
graffiti on
painted
them,
on them,
yes.
and I think it's really accurate.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I think I'll connect with Eric and then try to get you that information, because I do think it should be a key thing to paint over.
Yeah, consumers will have to
Yeah.
do that because of the pain they have to use because of the temperature.
Yeah, I figured. But it would be, I think it would be beneficial for you, at least if one of you to have a conversation with Eric, because that really needs assistance. Yeah.
Design.
And then the other question I had about the American Cleaners building, I heard T when you mentioned the demolition, are you looking to demolish it to redevelop it into something? Or I heard in the past that you guys were talking about a parking lot, and I was just talking about this property yesterday with Dan Leonard. So if you talk about the demolition, are you looking for redevelopment after demolition, or what do you think that's what you guys are looking at?
Well, we still, the numbers for redevelopment still are not, the financials are not working out, even with a higher CRP grant.
And Dan's aware of that.
Oh,
project.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've talked with him,
He's-
with him about once a week about it, because, so what we had discussed here, 2 options would be to demolish the building, pave portions of the property that are not paved because of due care, environmental due care requirements, and just use it for parking. We also talked about the option of, again, doing the same, but do some improvements, landscaping, and so on. In order for Dan to bring funds, he's looking at a much bigger project than what we are prepared to do at this time. So that's why the discussion with the DEQ, we have some funds available for demolition and minimum due care work because the property used to have an underground storage tank, therefore it qualified.
But
So,
I guess I would summarize that as we didn't buy that property to be part of
Well,
it. We
and I-
bought it to
Correct.
redevelop it or to have it be part of a redevelopment.
so whatever we
But
do is
now that
temporary.
it's set there for 2 years,
Yeah.
if that's not going to happen, we need to do something. So that's kind of phase 1 is let's tear down the buildings, pave, so it could be used for parking. Hoping that maybe there's still a redevelopment project that can still take use of that, and we haven't, hindered that. But, a couple years down the road, if after 5 years, then we probably need to invest in beautifying it and landscaping it, because it's probably then gonna be a parking lot forever.
Well,
So, we don't wanna spend this money to demo these buildings, but we can't leave deteriorating buildings at that intersection, speaking for our community. So, we've gotta start moving in some ways.
I agree. I just was hoping that it wasn't, you guys weren't planning to demolish it, to just have it sit demolished in there. That's why I asked the
No,
question, so.
no, I mean, if we could have it redeveloped right now, we'd love to.
Yeah, okay. Cool, then I think, those are the only things I have for you. The second, I still have to check with back on radar for Joe's initiative. He is supposed to do a public presentation, kind of in the same way we did it when we did the whole theater meeting. And then for the branding survey, the results that I mentioned, I will hopefully send those to you the second I go downstairs. And then, yeah, I think that's it now.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Lizette.
Yeah.
New business consideration of the liquor license application for Hudson Crops. The event request was submitted to Chief Kozel, and we have to submit a liquor license.
So can I make a motion that we approve it? All right, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Stick it on the record, sure.
Mosier made the motion. Wild supported. All in favor? Any opposed? The design committee in your packet included a facade grant application from Spicer Group. Is there a motion for support?
I make that motion.
Just a, okay, I support,
And with this application, we will fully utilize the budgeted funds for this year. So,
And when does that renew again?
For,
for the facade grant,
for 1819 or 1920?
the year we're in, which is 1819.
Oh,
So,
okay, so the motion then is to approve the facade grant.
so going into July 1 though,
there's $10,000
There,
for
okay.
the
will be-
okay,
and hopefully a lot more if
right.
we get positive feedback from the agency.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, so the facade grant is for exterior improvements to the building leased by Spicer for an amount not to exceed 5,000.
Correct.
Okay. Brooks,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
Taxiaris, yes. Wild,
Yes.
Moser.
Yes.
And I'll also vote yes.
Can I ask a question about that? Just a process question so that I can kind of help Caitlin. What is the next step? This is the first facade grant I've experienced. What is the next step? Now, obviously, probably a letter going to them or an email saying you've been approved. And then, does the project get done and then they submit
Yeah,
for reimbursement?
yeah.
Now, that money's in a separate fund too, isn't it? So it doesn't matter if the years cross, because, okay.
That's the
So I
reason
just
we-
need to tell Caitlin
Yeah.
that when you get something, or I'll let Spicer know, they need to send something back saying, if we spent the money, the project's done, okay.
And then I believe the design committee approves it for
We're fine.
payment. Yeah,
So bring it back to the design committee for final payment.
yeah.
Okay.
Authorization letter to Consumers Energy. Tom?
Oh, yes, I was approached by Consumers Energy a few weeks ago, in fact, the very day before the design committee meeting, which was good timing. A gentleman, they're working on that contamination down by the Chamber of Commerce, And now they're proceeding down the river a little bit and taking core samples out of the river to see what other contaminations might be there that they need to clean up. And so we own that parking lot between the barber shop and the insurance company. And in order for them to get right across from the art park, the DDA owns that. And so in order for them to take core samples out of the river, which is surprising to me, you actually own basically the bottom of the river halfway through or something. So they need approval to do that. And they gave me a sample letter and everything. Because I wasn't sure if I had the authority to do it, I took it to the design committee. The design committee said, yes, you need to do it. Because I told them, the next board meeting is June 12th, they said, well, if it takes that long, you know, it's not worth it to us, but we would like it. It really helped them in their DEQ permit. So I sent them the approval letter, you know, thinking, what harm is there? This is actually a good thing.
Well,
So-
you could just addend that and say, and by the way, if you can let us paint these things.
Oh, well, we can send a letter to them. In fact, I'm sure we'll send it. Also, so I did, so this has already
Yeah.
really been approved
Makes
by
sense.
me. The design committee said, I think in your authority as director, you should have the authority to do that. But it was put on today's agenda just to either have you confirm it or scold me or whatever.
I don't think
Okay,
that's gonna be a
no, it's
motion
fine,
on it.
and the key wording that was included in the letter, your approval letter, was that the samples that we're going to take and the spoils of taking the samples will be disposed in the landfill. That was key.
Yeah.
That's the liability protection for the DDA.
And I'd like to say that that was my wording, but that was not, that was consumer's wording. So. I love to take credit for that, but I didn't.
Any more discussion? Okay, Kyle asked
Okay, so
for
that's-
DDA meeting date and time to be added to the agenda. And what he's proposing is that we move our meeting to a morning meeting because the 12 o'clock meeting is an interruption to the
Yeah.
day. Basically, if we just started in the morning, because we never know how long the meetings are going to go for when they're at noon. So it's kind of hard to plan your afternoon. If it started at 8,
Yeah, I was just wanting to bring it up for discussion. I don't know if it's ever been, when I was on DDA.
we've changed meeting dates sometimes before.
Yeah.
But there does have to be a motion because it's in our bylaws.
Well, and then when I heard all this, I said, we should check the bylaws because I think the time is actually in the bylaws. And since we need to change it for other things anyway, this would be a good time to get that changed out too.
So do you have
Does
a,
anybody have any opinions? Or-
I prefer a morning
I
meeting.
would too,
Me too.
Yep.
just stay away from Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I mean, it could stay the same day. I just think 8 or 9 o'clock, then at least you know you got your morning locked off.
Let's keep it.
Wednesday.
What do you think?
Well,
If we can make it 8:30,
This is gonna go in the bylaws. This is almost permanent.
Actually, it
Well-
really, truly at 8 o'clock would be.
you
It should
prefer,
be 8
you all,
o'clock.
okay, if you, fine.
I know what.
if
Okay,
there's a
so,
motion, I'm fine.
I'll make a
Well-
motion that we request a bylaw change. Is that accurate?
Direct the bylaw committee.
Direct the
Yeah.
bylaw committee to change our meeting time to 8 a.m. on Wednesdays.
The second
Second
Wednesday.
Wednesday of each month.
I'll support that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, so just to be clear, this does not take effect at your July
No.
meeting.
Right.
That You will maybe make the bylaw change.
The
at July
bylaws have
meeting,
to
and
change,
it'll take
yeah,
effect on-
correct.
Okay.
I mean,
The bylaws should, bylaw committee should be on the next agenda.
With
Changes.
changes.
Yeah. And
This
ready
done.
for approval at the July meeting.
Cool.
Do we need to check and see if anything else is scheduled this week?
Doesn't need,
Oh, that's a good idea.
You
Can
can,
you check on that?
check with Cindy,
I'll check.
but I doubt there's anything.
doesn't need a public hearing for a change in the bylaws? I can't remember.
Please no.
No.
No, I agree.
But it does have to go to city council
That's
for their
right.
approval, so.
Okay.
Any public comment?
I'm just gonna take a quick opportunity to introduce myself, because you're all looking at me like, who's that? My name is Carrie Koslov. I'm the new banking center manager for Chemical Bank here in Manistee. So I wanted to come to the DDA. I spent 6 years on the downtown Ludington Development Board. So I come with a lot of experience in all things of downtown development. I served as the events committee chair there for many years, and so all the party night lives and any of the events that go on downtown Oktoberfest. I was part of the dream team to make those things happen. So I come with a lot of experience. As I try to immerse myself in the Manistee community, I'm more than happy to come on board and help as the DDA would have wants or needs, something that I have a lot of experience in. I came to Chemical Bank. I was scouted from a senior retail corporation, so I come from a retail background. Previous to that, I was a commercial insurance producer for an agency in Ludington, and that is where I got all of my history and developing nonprofits and helping them to move forward. I also worked for COPE, which is the Communities Overcoming Encounters. I was their marketing and communications director for 4 years. So I have a lot of experience in all these things, and I know that the DDA can be a true heart to a downtown, and they can either leave or break. So I just want to offer my services to let you know that I'm here. I know we are head sponsor for this Lake Ball Parade. So definitely want to be coordinate and make sure that we are supportive of that in any way that we possibly can. I'll be reaching out too. I'll just give you my card right now. Thank you.
We can put you on speed.
Please do. Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to me.
Carrie, did you move to the community?
I actually still reside in Ludington. My intention and expectation is, I actually lived in Manistee a handful of years ago. So it's kind of coming back. And so we are actually looking for property. I may be moving up here for the winter time because I do recall that drive to Manistee in winter time was kind of fair. So I currently have a home downtown Ludington. So, and I have a son who has chosen to go to high school, Manistee Catholic. So he will be there in the fall. I have a daughter too. I'm not sure. She goes to the Catholic school in Ludington, and she's kind of partial to that, but they only go to 8th grade in Ludington. You all have my card now, please, right now. But I did see, because I am somebody who lives online, I like to do my due diligence before I walk into a meeting, that you do have a gap in your marketing and communication. That's something that I'm very well versed in. So, okay?
Thank you
Nice to
very
meet you.
much.
It's going to be a good year.
I,
To adjourn.
So
Through support? Yes. Okay, you got that, Jane?